McFarlane calls in a clone. Here's your look at the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse Bizarro. Bizarro is an imperfect clone of Superman, created by Lex Luthor to destroy the Man of Steel, but the defective duplicate has never succeeded, and as a superpowered being with very low intellect, Bizarro is a brute known for his childlike and dangerous temper tantrums. Despite having many of Superman's amazing abilities, most of Bizarro's powers are the exact opposites of those possessed by the Man of Steel. Before we get a closer look at this product of imperfection, the first thing we're going to want to do is figure out how tall the DC Multiverse Bizarro is by taking this trusty tape measure that I currently hold in my hand, and we're going to put it right to the very top of his head, which is right around there. I'm going to stop the tape measure, and to reveal it to you, the viewing audience, DC Multiverse Bizarro stands about 7 inches. Yes, I probably could say 7.066. I find that personally unnecessary, so we're going to just stick with 7 for now. While we switch that over to centimeters, the figure's about 18 centimeters, 17.9 to be exact. Admittingly, the accessories that come included with Bizarro are on the light side. He comes included with a stand, yes. He comes included with a trading card, yes. But that's pretty much what you come to expect now with DC Multiverse figures. If you exclude those two things, the only other thing that comes with the figure are 2 mauling hands. Stay tuned for those. But of course, going back and backtracking ourselves to the beginning of that description, he comes included with the display stand. The same black stand with the same DC logo down below and the same one standalone peg just off to the side of the stand. Again, I like the fact that let this sit in. How many companies actually still include display stands with their figures? There's very little of them still doing it. I like the fact that McFarlane Toys still includes display stands with all their figures. I'm going to put that to the side for the time being. It also comes included with a trading card, which so happens to be the same artwork that's on the back of the packaging. You can see that there's Bizarro. It seems like he's flying in mid-space. There's also a little couple of panels going on there in the back to kind of show what Bizarro's doing. Almost looks like he's pointing. Oh, he's throwing cats in a tree. Again, that's the opposite. That's not really what you would want Superman to be doing. And of course, on the back, you've got yourself the description read-up. The source in this case is Superman number 42, Comics 2017. Real name is none. Height is 6'3", and the weight is 250 pounds. The very read-up that you see down below currently on the card is the same read-up I use at the beginning of this intro. So if you want to have that narrated, you don't have to get that to tape, books on tape, but instead just, again, listen to the beginning of this review. Anyways, that's the included trading card. You know where that's going to go? Somebody is yelling the recycling bin? No. That's going to go into my trading card sheets, where I'm currently collecting all the other DC Multiverse trading cards. I like to hold on to these personally. Okay, so we've cut 2/3 of the accessories out of the equation, which then basically just leaves the last accessories. I guess technically if you count these as singular pieces, then we've then cut the count by half. He does come with mauling hands, grabbing hands. One thing I do like about the hands that they're unique to each other. You're not getting the exact same hand in both cases. They could have easily just mirror flipped this, of course, and swapped the thumb placement around. But no, you get very unique looking hands. And I like these. Currently sitting in the sockets of his forearms, he's got some closed fists. I don't find personally the closed fists. You know my feelings of closed fists. You don't? My feelings on closed fists is generally I find them a little on the boring side. The only time I find is different when I change my feelings of that is sometimes where I like to have the figure kind of holding his hand up like he's ready to start pounding somebody. But in this case, no pounding is coming from Bizarro. What we're going to do is we're going to yank the hands off. We're going to do the same on the other side. I have noticed that the DC Multiverse figures have very easy to free hands. Although he's saying that, the last one was a little bit more trickier. But we're going to go ahead and pop the new hands in place. Slide those in just on top of those pegs. Do the exact same thing on the other side. Rinse and repeat. And you've got now Bizarro with some mauling hands. Not technically, they don't always have to be mauling. That sort of just paints him into a corner. They're at least gestured hands. We'll stick with that. definitely going to be the way I'm going to display the figures with these hands. Let's now get a closer look at his head sculpt. I sort of feel like I'm on the fence with what I feel about this figure's head sculpt. Not that I really should be comparing things, but I'm going to bring in the trading card to give you what I feel to be a more closer, well, at least my idea of what I consider Bizarro to be. He sort of has that Mo from the Three Stooges hairstyle, and then he's got a very wide, squared jaw. Speaking of painting him into a corner, that's very much specifically sort of saying, this is the way I want Bizarro to look. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. But when I'm looking at a card like this, and then I'm seeing a figure like this, though the head sculpt is really quite good on the figure, it more so reminds me of Grey Hulk in a little bit of a way. He's got the shaved side of his head, so of course there's no stubble going on there as well. It then gives an opportunity to really showcase some nice little vein work. I'm hoping the camera's actually able to pick that up. See the little veins on the side of his head? Some of them actually look like lightning bolts. I wonder if he's related to Harry Potter. Probably not. That's silly. But like the hair is good. It's just jarring what I'm normally expecting to see with a Bizarro figure. Again, I know that's kind of not really being fair to the figure itself. Let's look at his face. Let's just hone ourselves in. Feast our peepers on his face. I mean, I like this part. His open mouth, which droops just slightly. You see there's visible teeth on the tops and the bottoms, and those have been painted in nicely. The coloring is also really good on it as well. The airbrushing that they've put around the eyes, just to add a little bit of depth going there. So it's not just all the coloring of the gray plastic. There's a little something extra to be looking at. It may be just a case where I'm used to a character looking a certain way, so I sort of have to educate myself and kind of retrain myself that there's other designs of these characters. Just because this isn't my favorite design of Bizarro does not make this a bad figure at all. In fact, I think like I said, the head sculpt looks really good, but it reminds me closer to being like a Grey Hulk. As for the rest of this body, his larger behemoth body, he's got a very large upper torso. Of course, one of the things you would expect to see with a Bizarro is a inverted or reversed S, and he does have that as well. It looks slightly on the sloppier side, like it's just been painted on, like he's literally painted this onto his costume. And I guess in some ways, that's an effective thing. Like you would think Bizarro would have made his own outfit. You can see just like the way that it's not a straight cut. None of the sides actually are straight. It looks like literally he just took a paintbrush and painted this onto his chest. So for that regard, and in that way, I guess it's a somewhat effective looking S. He doesn't have the S, though, on the back of his cape. Though I do like the look of the cape. It's made of a very rigid plastic. This is the kind of cape I would expect to see from a Spawn. Funny enough, me then saying that. It does have some nice little rips and tears along the bottom area here. And even like the cape itself has texturing to it as well. That looks really nice. Spinning the figure, though, back around, gone away is his underoos in favor of just a continuation of the same blue. Although the lower underoos, I know some people hate when I say that, the lower underoos are a softer plastic, but they're not quite the same color as the rest of his body. It then draws even more attention to the fact that these are a separate piece, because then when you're looking at the things all around it, his arms, his legs, and his torso, then yes, not only is the coloring different, but it also seems to reflect the light just a little bit more differently. The plastic, you can see, reflects the light a lot more than this part right here in his lower underoos. I will say that one thing about the figure, as I move the figure back a little bit, I find proportionately he seems a little on the squat side. The top half isn't so bad. Like if I look at it just like this, covering the bottom half with my hand, I think it's proportionally a good looking figure. When I then move my hand away, it seems like his lower half, specifically his legs, seem slightly shorter. I wonder if maybe more of the problem is not so much the lower leg, not from the knee down to the ankle, but more so here. I feel like his thighs are a little on the short side, and maybe that's what's throwing off his proportions. He doesn't have much, though, in the way of the coloring. I mean, most of the figure is either just this blue plastic, or it's red plastic, like the belt, for example, which probably has been painted in. Yes, as you can see, it's been painted on top of it. There's a little bit of red down at the tops of his boots, so he's gone away from the idea of wearing red boots in favor of just an all blue boots with the M's, McDonald's M's, along the top area here. Let's have a look at the articulation on Bizarro. His head rotates all the way around. You probably don't have to make that noise while doing it. The head also moves up, it moves down, and it moves back and forth. There seems to be a fair enough range going on here, and probably a lot of it has to do with the fact that the inside of his mouth, see right underneath there, there's quite an open chasm. I think this allows for a lot more mileage when it comes to moving the head up, down, and all the things I just finished mentioning. His arms, however, move outward, and you can pull off successfully a 90-degree angle bend. I guess you could technically bring them up just a little bit more, but it seems to be a stopping point right around there. He does also have the socketed joints on the insides of his shoulders. That allows then for the arms to move inward a little bit more and also outward a little bit more because he's got that cup joint. Then for his actual shoulder, he does have the pin joint or the hinge joint, so it allows the arms to move all the way around, and again, we just finished looking at it, allows the arms to move outward as well. He swivels at the bicep. This may involve me actually holding the shoulder, because a lot of times when you rotate the arm, the shoulder seems to want to go along for the ride, like a younger brother. But the arm does rotate all the way around via the bicep. You can double hinge the elbow. There's one, there's two. It does leave a little more of a visible area where it looks just more like a socketed joint when you bend the arm. But in order for then to incorporate the elbow right here, sacrifices do have to be made. And I'm sure you're probably not going to be displaying your figure doing this. Kind of looks like he's about to shoot a bow and arrow or something. But his hands, whatever hands you decide to put on in place, hands move back and forth and hinge in and out. Sometimes, though, while you are moving the hand, somehow just ends up popping off the peg. I mean, that's not a bad thing at all. I mean, I'd rather that popping off where I can just put it back in place than it popping off and breaking off. That's the last thing I really want to have happen. The upper torso is on a ball joint. The lower torso is also on that same ball joint. Well, that's not true. That's not true. It's not the same ball joints. It's two completely different ball joints. The legs split out, and I can't help but notice that when I'm moving the legs out, do you hear it? Do you hear it? There is a ratcheted joint on the inside. You can actually see a few of the little ledges of plastic then the leg hits. And then when it goes over it, you hear that ratcheted joint. A nice way to prolong the durability of these legs not developing looseness. The legs also can move forward and back. Swivels at the top where that's attached to that ball peg. Has a double hinge on the knees. He has no articulation from this point to this point here. However, Bizarro's feet can move back and forth. You can also move them back and forth this way as well. And he does also have toe articulation. How many of you like toe articulation on your figures? Well, if you do, he does have it also on this figure as well. Bizarro's not a bad-looking figure. I mean, Bizarro's the kind of character I like to get in a collection. Most of the time in the past, it's generally been just reusing an existing Superman figure and then just simply swapping the S's around and changing out the head sculpt. Let's get him to actually stand here. You know what? We've got ourselves a display stand after all. Let's bring that into play. Attaching it to the undersides of his feet, at least to one of them. That's somewhat ridiculous. It almost kind of looks like he's dancing. But there's Bizarro. Like I said, normally in past instances, Bizarro tended to be a Superman figure that they just inverted the S and changed the head sculpt. In a case like this from McFarlane Toys, at least you get yourself a bigger, beefier looking Bizarro, which I think actually is using at least some mold elements from probably Superman the Infected, which I probably for this review probably should have brought in. Resulting is a good-looking Bizarro that's different in build from a traditional-looking Superman. He has big, stocky proportions, slightly more squatter-looking legs, which is one thing I probably would have changed to the character. And the head sculpt is something that I think I'm going to have to grow into liking. Initially, I think it looks more like Grey Hulk to me, and because I'm just more used to seeing Bizarro a certain way in the comics, blame me. I don't think I'm warming up to the head sculpt maybe as much in the beginning, but leave it with me. I'm sure I'm going to develop more of a likeness to this, or more of a like to this figure, the longer I have it in my collection. I feel like when you get into a line like this, you have to leave expectations at the door for what you expect a character to look like. I mean, case in point, when you're looking at the back of the packaging for Bizarro here from DC Rebirth, what you're seeing is a square-jawed Bizarro with little squinty little eyes and a Moe hairstyle from Three Stooges. I mean, if you ask me, that's the way Bizarro will look. But we're not really getting that with the Bizarro here from the DC Rebirth, DC Multiverse line. What we're getting instead is almost something closer to being the Grey Hulk. It's not necessarily a bad thing. If that's the way you want to see your Bizarro in your head when you're thinking about the character, then yeah, I think it's a successful looking character. I mean, again, when you're thinking of all the figures that we've gotten up to this point in the DC Multiverse line, they're not really fitting all the people's ideas of what those characters look like even just the Jokers that we've gotten. Joker's the one that's kind of coming to my mind right now. Like White Knight Joker, it's not a traditional looking Joker, and yet some people like that figure, some other people don't. Some people by that may like this Bizarro and other people may not. While it's not a head sculpt I would have probably chosen, I think the paint and the sculpt on it is pretty good. I like the costuming, even though I find like the body proportions still on his legs are a little on the short squatter side. But maybe that works well for a character like Bizarro and wouldn't work as well for a character like Superman. The colors are good, and I even kind of like that somewhat painted on logo that he's got on his torso as well. I think for all the things I could add up positively for this figure, I think he gets the pass. There are things, of course, me as a person designing a character, if I was to get into a toy line, I would probably design Bizarro to be the way that I think of Bizarro to look like, but it may not be the same thing that other people would consider the character to look like. So again, our opinions may differ from one another, but overall, I think we can all agree it's a good-looking Bizarro with a somewhat debatable-looking head sculpt. If you have picked up this figure for yourself, let me know down below in the comments section what you guys think of it, or even if it's just only this review as you've been introduced to the DC Rebirth Bizarro, then let me know, do you like this head sculpt, or do you think it looks a little more like Grey Hulk? I always like reading your comments down below. Make sure, new members, if you are a new person coming to this channel for the first time, hello, come on in. But make sure if you are new to this channel that you're hitting the subscribe button down below, and that you're also turning on the bell notification as your way to ensure that when new videos are popping up onto this channel, like say, for example, DC Multiverse, because we will be looking at more of those, then you will be getting those friendly little reminders, those drops of hello from YouTube. I can also give you a bit of a phone call and remind you as well that Monday to Friday, 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is when we'll have new videos popping up. Don't worry, I'm not actually going to call you. I think that's kind of stalkerish. But there's definitely going to be a lot more videos coming your way. So as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.